Welcome to Well Played Podcast, the show on all things playful and joyous in education. I'm your host, Michael Matera, 6th grade teacher, author, and speaker. Well Played is part of the On Podcast Media Network. Definitely check out some of their podcasts. Always a good listen. Today we have with us Jeremy coming back for Boss Battles in the Classroom Part 2 of ? Don't worry, won't be next week, but I'm sure we're going to talk about it again. Before we get into it, I'm going to have everyone stop right here. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, listen to that one. And then on your car ride home, listen to this one, because they're both a treat. This is me somewhat believing that this is going to be a treat. We haven't done this one. But all right. So, but now for those of you that are returning now to this podcast on your commute home, Jeremy, if you can kind of introduce yourself yet again, but remember they heard you this morning. So
that's right. So welcome back, all of you. So my name is Jeremy Cedarquist. I teach in the Central Valley of California. I teach 8th grade math. What else? I don't know. I've not stumbled like this before.
What's one of your favorite games to play?
Favorite games to play? Well, we were just chatting Second Chance before we started. So I've been doing that with Game Club at my school, and that's been a lot of fun.
That was a good one. I did that one on my YouTube game sort of Let's Play. I haven't done one of those in a long time, but that was fun.
Those were awesome. That's where I got it from.
Nice. All right, so we're going back to the boss battles here, and the reason we kind of had a back-to-back podcast on this, people, you'd think it's because boss battles are amazing. You might think it's because there's so much to talk about. Both those would be correct, but not correct in why we chose to talk about it 2 weeks in a row. We chose to talk about it 2 weeks in a row because last week we didn't get to the actual topic we wanted to get to, and that's just how we roll when we have good conversations, right, Jeremy?
That's right.
So Jeremy had worked on kind of a new sort of system for his boss battle, and he had mentioned it and shared it out on an XP Lab, and I was like, "Oh, this looks awesome. Can we do a podcast on it?" He was like, "Sure, let's do that." And then we never talked about it. So,
but we talked about a lot of other stuff, boss battles, and that was really cool.
It's true. So let's kind of have you tell us this new system you used.
So in all fairness, though, and you mentioned sharing it out on XP Lab. In all fairness, this idea did not originate with me. I've seen lots and lots of other gamifiers do this. Adam Powley has a spreadsheet-based system that he does his boss battles with. That's really awesome. I know that Ryan Stevens does his boss battles this way. So I just kind of shifted and jumped on the bandwagon.
Standing on the shoulders of giants.
That's right. And it is cool how much better we all are, when we kind of cross-pollinate ideas and we all put our own little spin on it and then share it back out there. And then usually it can come back to you and get a better version of it or a different version of it and make you think about something different. So it's pretty cool.
That's what I absolutely love about the XP Lab community. Everybody's a bunch of doers and sharers. So, I'm a little biased here. It is probably the chat I have gone to the most in my life. But I do like it. Like every week, people are literally like giving true suggestions. Here's an activity I've ran. Here's items I've used. Here's how I do my boss battle. And either you can take some of those things wholesale or you learn something from it, and it informs how you do a boss battle or how you create items. And it's just a wonderful community.
Absolutely.
So let's hear this idea that has been money laundered through the entire XP Lab community.
That's exactly it. So basically, what I said is my boss battles have been promoted. So we talked a lot last week about doing boss battles as a review, and that's still great. And inspiration from last week. I'll still probably drop in some reviews, drop in some mini battles with that same format. But this year, boss battles really in my class are going to be living in the assessment, like actual test sort of category. So what I've done is I've set up a Google form. It's got a picture of the boss in it. I put like a link to a YouTube video with some music on there. I have Eye of the Tiger was what we did for our first two, so the kids could play that and have that playing. And so they go through the questions, they answer the questions. And apart from, having Eye of the Tiger playing and a picture of the boss there, right? Otherwise it's pretty much just a regular test, right? They fill it out, they turn it in. And then when they turn it in, that information gets pulled over to a spreadsheet with a picture of the boss again, although I made him a GIF on here, so he's kind of like moving around a little bit. And then he's got the health bar up there. And so once the student turns in their battle, right, the health bar goes down a little bit, and then they've got a health bar too. And for all the wrong questions they get, their health bar goes down a little bit. And so it was kind of a fun twist. And what kind of got me going on this in this direction was that I'm full digital. We mentioned this last week. Again, I know we're repeating everything. You all listened to this morning, right? But
that's right.
I'm full digital.
But it was after a long work day, so just a light reminder's okay.
Yeah, a light reminder. That's right. So we're full digital this year, and so I've kind of got like my lens turned towards, can this go asynchronous, right? Can it be something that we can do together, but can it be something that my students can do separately? And so the first time I ran this, I actually did it on our asynchronous day, where we meet, in web meetings 4 days of the week and have one day that they have an independent at-home assignment. And so I just put that on Google Classroom and put the Google form into lock mode. So when it opened up, they couldn't access any other tabs. And then it was kind of fun because then I could go through the day and watch the boss's health slowly drop through the day. And like, I was more engaged in this asynchronous test than I've been engaged in one of their tests in quite some time. He
uses the word engaged. What he means to use is distracted.
Hey, but I'm checking my students' test scores here.
That's right. That's right.
This is professional responsibilities.
That's right. I dig it.
But it was really fun. I at one point, because I wasn't going to be seeing them through the day, jumped on and did a quick Loom video and threw some like news anchor music in the background and was like, this boss battle update, and like went through and said where everyone was at, and then posted that on Classroom. And
that's fantastic.
So it was really fun.
Good use of Loom too. I'm a big fan of Loom. So this system here, you've used it so far once this way, right?
Twice now.
Twice.
So the second time I did it, I did it in class. Well, in class, right? So over web meeting altogether. Although even with that, because I had the form in lock mode, I think all my students had to log out of the meeting to take it and then log back in because it didn't let them have those multiple tabs open, which wasn't a big deal. But then I could, do some of that commentary, with the students that were there. I could play some music over the meeting, and all of that. So
I'm a big fan of those little additions. I'll definitely tell people, like, when I run a boss battle in my class, music is 100% important for me. I have a Spotify account, and I always look up epic music, and there are all sorts of like CDs. That's not a thing. There's also there's all these playlists. Playlists of epic scores and stuff, and you put that on, and instantly like the room gets like tense. The room gets like, yes, all right, we're doing this. Huge fan of that. But I've never done sort of a digital boss battle in that, like, having the digital component where you see a bar graph changing, you see like stats changing before your eyes. I could see this being pretty engaging for students. Like, I'm trying to think of post pandemic, if that world actually exists someday in the future. But
it will.
Someday, right? I do like, yes. Sorry. My mind was just like, there's like 8 jokes went in my head, and I'm like, no, we don't have to do pandemic jokes. But, yeah, so I think that could be really fun, right? Like you could put that up on your screen. It would be a little bit like, any of these things like GimKit or Kahoot, to see that sort of live happenings. I think that's pretty awesome. For me, one of the things that I struggle with automated bosses is how to create like flexibility in what my bosses do. So each of my bosses, I try to give like a unique spin to it. And then that's where the coding slows down, gums down. I like, it just, like, I know how to code it to like subtract 5 because they rolled a 5 or whatever. But, yeah, if I want like 5 to be a special number in this boss, or maybe this boss, we talked about last week, I have one boss where it's like their hit points really low, but if they get it wrong, like 2 more spawn. And so it's really just like whack-a-mole. There's like one boss turns into 20 bosses or whatever. But I don't know how to like code that into like an automated system.
Yeah. And I think going back to our conversation last week, we
you mean this morning for some of our listeners?
That's right. This morning. So, and thank you all for sticking with us. This is a lot of Michael and I you're listening to today. So thank you for that. But we talked about like the scalability of boss battles, right? And we talked about how like I said, I started really small. Like I didn't even use dice at first. It was just subtract a raw amount. And really that's sort of where I'm at with this Google form version of it. And now that I've done it a couple times now, there's some things that I've already got in my brain to tighten down. Like I want to make it so that some of those fields are a little bit easier to edit in terms of the health points of the boss, in terms of this number of students and some of those setting pieces. But also now I can start to think about something like, okay, well, maybe I could have a die roll at the end of the quiz. That's a die roll question, right? And they can pick a number 1 to 6, and they don't know that that's going to be a roll necessarily, but maybe we could have different things happen assigned based on that. And so there's some player choice, some player interaction there, or maybe it could be as simple as, do you want to roll dice A or do you want to roll dice B, right? And then we could have displays for the 2 different dice A and dice Bs. And so again, it's kind of like we start with where we're at and then can build from there. One mechanic that I used in this first one that I made, though, is I put 2 columns basically that were, I think I called them endurance and attack, something like that. But they're just basically places where I could either add more attack against the boss or add more health for the student. And so with those, I actually use those kind of as hints. At the point where we were doing these boss battles, I hadn't given any students any cards yet, but I had 3 Easter eggs hidden on the map that I had made for them. And so I put 2 questions in the boss battle intentionally saying, do you have an item to play to add endurance? Do you have an item to play to add attack? To kind of like give them a hint like, hey guys, there's some items out there for you to find. And so with even that basic mechanic, you could, especially if you're in person, or even if you're, kind of that second scenario I said that where you're together even on a web meeting, you could have a component where you could randomly select a student to roll a dice for additional attack, or to add some attack in there that you could do manually. That's more flexible maybe than the rigid system,
Yeah. So for me, I mean, this sounds awesome. Like, I can't wait to hear more of how you sort of develop it, tweak it. Like you said, make some of those variable boxes a little easier for everyone else to sort of plop in and use. But I think with each iteration, it gets a little better, a little smoother. And this sounds like a great place actually for people to start, because it is like a nice simplistic system with the same, like, I don't know, look and sort of feel of something that's more complex, right? Because there's these these things happening in the background. That's super cool. I love that you could do the updates throughout the day, like with the asynchronous setup. That's something I haven't tackled. One of the features I would suggest for people if they're going to try their hand at a boss battle. I don't know if I should say this. I don't know, man. I'd say we should ask the audience, but I don't.
I think the audience would say you have to now because you alluded to it. So now you gotta share.
It's a must. All right. I'm curious if anybody would have voted to not hear it. I guess don't say anything. But if you were to vote to hear it, drop a comment on the YouTube. This is episode 30. Okay. So for me, my tip is I really like to go. I do this a lot in my classroom with things that are low to no prep for me as the designer, and kind of offload that because I know my content so well, right? So one such example, this year I decided to make my boss battle a little different than I had done in the past, and I sort of broke this thing up into several engagements that they had, and that was just my fancy word for like round, right? So we had different rounds, and the first round was taking a quiz, and they had to get to a certain percentage, and then if they did that, it unlocked to the next level. But to build the quiz was pretty easy because if you've ever used quizzes, you can like grab questions from other people's quizzes. So I mean, it took me all of like 6-7 minutes to like build a 20 question quiz from around our content, and we played that. And then the second round was, and this is my favorite part, was each group got a blank Google slide. So again, no prep on my part. I just needed to make 5 blank slides, and then I would give kind of like little round questions for them. So like this round, you'd have to tell me what's like the most impactful invention from this, society. And then they would have to like build a slide with a cool background, like title, text, info, whatever, in whatever amount of time you give them, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. They're doing it together as a team. But again, you get this idea of that's low to no prep for me. I mean, it's just making a blank Google slide. And then the third and final thing is where we actually get to like the boss. I tried to simulate this. I really kind of took the idea from like Mario Brothers, like classic Mario, right? You'd go through all these like mini levels, mini challenges, and then eventually you got to Bowser, in the castle, like on like round 3, right? It was like world 1-1, then it was like 1-2, 1-3, and then that's where the boss was. So I kind of took that same idea where you like did these other challenges just to get up to the boss, and then insert another example of low to no prep. I mean, other than me making like a fancy background and deciding like a feature that this boss has and setting a health amount, it is truly just I ask questions off the top of my head from our unit. Or I have my textbook open and I'm looking at some of the vocab words, and it's like, oh yeah, let's ask a question about this. Like, what is this one? Or what is that one? Or who's this person? And rolling the dice and trying to get that guy down. But super streamlined in terms of your prep. So this year, it seems like 2020 has been kind of a tough year. I'm gonna call it. Where it's not over yet. Maybe it'll get better, right?
We got that couple months left.
We have 2 months. We can turn it around. Anything to make things a little easier. And yet the students really like it. It's high engagement, but again, it's like low input from me. I like that. I like that system, and I think it's one that anybody can kind of use and try because it's not too difficult. I did just shoot a YouTube video about this, so if you want to go on my YouTube, I guess it depends when you listen to this, but assuming you are relatively in step with us, it is on my YouTube. If you look up boss battles, you'll probably find a few things. So yeah, check that one out. It kind of goes through it in a little more detail of how I did it and created some intense moments. It was fun.
Yeah, and I liked that you mentioned quizzes, because there are some good like tech tools that you can use that could give you like a track bar, a health bar of some variety that maybe are a little bit easier to set up than a Google form and a Google sheet. And so that can maybe be a good alternative to that, and still have that sort of, I don't know, team collaborative health bar effect. That's something that I really like with the way I run boss battles, is that team aspect of it, and something that I've really enjoyed with having my assessments as my boss battle is now kids have more than just their grade as a motivator. Now they have their peers, because they can't beat the boss without their peers, right? That everybody has to have input. Even if you get a poor score for your own individual self, like there's still some that you've taken down on the boss, and it can't be done without you. And that's something I really emphasized the first boss that we did. It was an asynchronous day. So there were kids that didn't log in and do their work. And so that first time, every class didn't beat the boss. A lot of them were pretty close, but in every class I was able to say, yeah, there was like 3 or 4 kids who didn't, actually I call them knights, right? So it's 3 or 4 knights who didn't come to the battle, and we were not successful without you. And so that's kind of cool. That's not something that you could say on a regular test.
That I remember, I can't believe I'm about to say this, like over a decade ago when I began gamifying, like that was one of the first things I recognized was the power of that team that we see in schools on, the basketball court, the football field, but we like don't see in our classroom really. Like it's kind of everybody fending for themselves. Like as long as I get an A, who cares about you? And it was like all of a sudden in this gamified model, there was an authentic vested interest in, high tides raises all boats, like let's, so kids, I remember kids like studying for quizzes and stuff like that out at recess, like with their class. Like you'd be like, what? Like, oh my gosh, like the House of Ramal is all sitting over there by that tree. Like, what are they doing? And you walk over there and they're like, they're quizzing each other on history questions. Like that's not normal.
That's so powerful.
But like you said, there's all of a sudden this vested interest. Like we want to do well in the game. We're kind of excited by the storyline of the game. And now I should take, not me, but me as a student would want to take time to sort of like coach up and make sure everyone in my house is doing well. So I do like that. And that's a feature I use in quizzes. They have like this bar at the top that's just talking about the class average percent in this quiz. And so it's a tool I started to use this year in my boss battles, where level 1 is just basically a lot of vocab, a lot of like the lower level thinking questions. But it is super important for my class because that's the language I want them to use when we're talking about higher order thinking questions. So it's like, yes, not the coolest questions to ask, but like it does lay the foundation for that higher work. So that's why I always make it level 1. And I always put it that they had to get to 90%. And if they don't, we just keep doing that portion of the battle over and over again. What I'm thinking about adding is an item. I thought of it actually today. By today, I mean like 5 minutes ago. But yes, that means on this podcast I thought of it. What about like an item that would give the house bonus XP per percent over the required amount?
So, okay, so you're saying like the boss has to be beat at 90%, average for the house.
Yep.
Right. So if they get 92%, they get
like the
X
house.
number
Like you have to make it a
people.
lot because at most they could get 100%, and like no, the house is not going to get 100%. So like you said, maybe it's like 500 XP for the house per percentage point over 90.
That's cool. I like that. I have to think about how that would work with how I've got things set up now, because already sort of for mine, right, their incentive for beating the boss is at least a portion of it is that they get additional XP. But I could change that every week, because I also said for the second boss battle, I was going to pick 10 students at random to give an item to. And so I could do a reward like that too, and then have an item or something that would bonus the XP as well. I like that. Always give me things to think about.
There's so much we can do in boss battles. That's, I think, why we love talking about them so much. And before the show, we're not going to talk about it because we're running out of time. But before the show, I was sharing with Jeremy another boss battle idea I had that I spent the entire day on, and I was like, I don't know if I should do it though. I mean, it looks cool, it's neat, it's thematic, it's different, but at some point, like, don't we have to give kids, like, if you learn a game, shouldn't you give them a chance to play the same game twice, 3 times, 4 times, so that, like, they can actually strategize the game? If I keep changing the game on them. So, but I'm just trying to create all this stuff for this new year. And so I thought of a different way to do the battle, and I kind of wanted to try it, but.
Okay, I know we're kind of going back to pre-recording, everyone, so apologize for that. But we talked about this. We already solved that problem, Michael, because we said, well, you'll just give that one as the assessment or the test, right? We're going to call it the carrot
potato of knowledge. Oh, this time it's going to be the carrot of wisdom.
That's right. And then you just do your regular boss battle, with your what was the word you used? 3 rounds. Engagements. Thank you. Your 3 engagements as your review. And then you get 2 boss battles in a week. I mean, everybody wins in that situation.
Everybody wins in that situation. I dig it. Well, it is reflection time already. So, you ready for this one? This one comes from Thomas Jefferson. Is he ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right.
Whatever Jefferson has to say, we'll spin it.
And for those of you that are listening to this both in the morning and in the afternoon, that's impressive.
I'm impressed.
Two reflection times in one day. Here we go. Do you want to know who you are? Don't ask, act. Action will delineate and define you. That's a big one. If you need me to repeat it, I will.
I mean, you throw the word delineate in there. It's like, blow my mind. I find that to be really true in life, but I think this really kind of takes me back to, we were talking about how powerful the XP Lab community is earlier, right? And how really they're a bunch of doers. They come, they share ideas, but then they grab those things and they run with them, and it's really, really cool and exciting to see what happens when talented educators put these ideas into practice, and they get out and they get doing. So that's what it makes me think of. I don't know if I got that correct or not. But,
I think you did. I think you did.
That's what it makes me think about.
You gave a spin for how us adults can do it. I'm going to give a spin for how this impacts kids. So between the two of us, we got it all. All right. So again, the quote is, do you want to know who you are? Don't ask, act. Action will delineate and define you. Thomas Jefferson. I think this is really powerful in terms of our students in light of boss battles in general, because to me, something that should be fun and should also be like informative in a good way are assessments, actually, right? But somewhere in the line of school, we've converted that into something to be fearful of, because like, oh, it's going to hit your grade, it's going to bother your parents, right? It becomes this thing to be nervous about, as opposed to when you sit down to play a video game, you're just like, whatever, I'm going to like try this. And like, yeah, oh, you lose. Like, who cares? Let's load it up again and I'm going to try again. I learned from that mistake. And I try to tell my kids, like, this is, like, you shouldn't fear a test. Like, have you prepared? Like, then stop worrying, put that energy into action, and just enjoy it. Like, enjoy the experience and learn from the mistakes and grow from it. And so I love this. Like, if you really want to know who you are, it is about holding yourself up to those challenges and seeing how you stack up to that challenge. And if you didn't stack up the way you want to stack up, make some changes in your life, right? And if you did stack up the way you wanted to, like, then, you know, still reflect over that so that you can maintain that level and maybe even push yourself further.
I like that. That's good. And yeah, and I like with gamification, we can start to pull some of that back, hopefully. Right? That hopefully we can start to pull back some of the scariness of an assessment, and hopefully try to inject some fun and look at it as a challenge opportunity for growth.
And you know, we could begin by changing the name to something as benign as potato of knowledge or carrot of wisdom. That comes from two of my students, Abigail and Eva. They're awesome. And we were talking at recess, and they were like, I was like, "You ready for your test?" They're like, "Oh, ooh, don't like that word." And I was like, "Well, do you prefer assessment?" And they're like, "Oh, worse. That hurts." And I said, "Well, what would you name it?" And they were like, "Well, how about like potato? Like, just call it a potato." And I was like, "Ooh, potato of knowledge. Dig it." And this was like a recess conversation. They didn't think I was actually going to do it. And then up on our LMS, I put like, you know, next class you have a potato of knowledge. They're like, "What? He did it. He did it."
That's so good.
But then it was kind of funny when I told the rest of the students, because the rest of the students weren't part of that conversation. They were like, "Why is it a potato of knowledge?" And I was like, because like some people are afraid of tests. Like, who in this room is afraid of potato of knowledge? And no one raised their hand. I was like, exactly.
Let's stick a fork in the potato. It's done.
It's done. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being part of the Well Played community, coming each and every week. And in this case, some of you came twice today, and that's awesome that you listened to the Well Played on your way into work and on your way out of work. If any of you did that, you know, give us a tweet, give us a comment on YouTube. We would love to hear that. As always, I love to hear from you guys. And Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on again 2 weeks in a row. We love having you. I'm sure you'll be a continual guest, moving forward. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, everybody else, you have a great day and play on.